A very good afternoon, a very warm welcome to all of you. I am Disha Jham, Head of Advisory Services, and I have been associated with NBC Advisors Private Limited for more than 2 years now. NBC Advisors Private Limited happens to be the one-stop shop for all kind of advisory services such as employee development and training, organizational development, recruitments, consulting, business administration, and payroll and strategical entry for doing business in India. Today's session is on prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, and the keynote speaker for today's session is Ms. Richa Sachdeva. She has experience of 8 years in driving the development of training programs that incorporate and incalculates the business financial goals. She develops and maintains interactive learning solutions which are functionally sound and work towards measurable results for the business fulfilling its quality standards. She has proven expertise in the highly collaborative role as she ensures building cross functional relationships with our clients to assist them with their training and operational challenges. So, to talk about PoSH Act in detail, I would request to take it up from here. But before that, we have a very short poll and we would like to get responses for the same. The poll would be open for 10 seconds. It comprises of which of the following has been met by by your organization. I'm starting a poll for 10 seconds. I would request you all to please give us the poll, and it is just for 10 seconds. I would be reminding it again. So just 2 seconds more left. I'm ending the poll in another 2 seconds. Thank you so much. And now we'll get this call to Richa and she will start over it. Over to you, Richa.
Thank you, Disha. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. A very warm welcome to all the attendees and all the participants here. Today, we'll be talking about the most sensitive yet the most important topic, which is PoSH, the PoSH Act, which happens to be prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. So, we all of us would have heard about this term many a times, but most of us would be unaware of what actually constitutes sexual harassment, what is the impact of sexual harassment on an employee and the employer, what steps an organization should take in order to prevent any kind of sexual harassment happening at the workplace, and if at all it happens, then what is the right complaint mechanism. So by the end of this session today, I ensure you to be advised of the complete law, the exact definitions and types of sexual harassment. What are the duties of an employee and the employer towards preventing the same? And if at all, an incident happens, then whom should you talk to? What is the right approach to follow? How to file a complaint? Where to file a complaint? So we'll be talking about all these aspects in detail. Let's start with the presentation now. The what, why, and how. So the modules we'll be covering today would be PoSH compliances, definition and types, ways of prevention, how to file a complaint, and cost impact of sexual harassment to a company. Now, some basic principles of, the PoSH policy, I would say. What is it? It is to basically ensure that any woman, be it an employee, be it not an employee, anybody who walks into an organization has a forum to seek redressal if there's any incident that has happened with her. Boundaries of professional, at times when people work together, they are unaware of what lines, they have to draw when they're talking to their colleagues or peers, especially when they work in close-knit groups. To provide an inclusive work environment which is respectful to both men and women. So we're not talking just about the women here, we're also talking about the men. This is again one of the important yardsticks, of measuring a successful workplace. Now, how do we ensure that the law is followed? By enforcing the same. And how do we enforce the same? By giving an awareness, by giving the training for the same. Sexual harassment need not be necessarily physical in nature. It We'll be discussing the types. It is verbal, it is physical, it is visual. So we'll be discussing the various things that can come under sexual harassment, but we have never heard of the same. Sexual harassment is no joke, of course. So let's remind ourselves that women who are present in our workplaces, whose contribution to the economy and to their family incomes and well-being is significant, we have to safeguard their interests. We have to respect them when they come daily to their workplaces. So let's say it loud and clear, guys, that sexual harassment is no joke. Now, PoSH training, what are the organizational benefits? So people who are employers here, people who are managers here, I would like to tell you why you should conduct this training in your workplaces and what are the organizational benefits that you can achieve. So it gives a feeling that the organization cares about the employee. Increases job satisfaction, of course. It boosts employee engagement, improves employee retention, improves the quality of the workplace culture, improves the perception of employees about the organization, and of course, protects organization's reputation and goodwill. Now, what are the 5 major reasons that you should go for this training? First of all, it's a legal mandate. There is a legal cost, a legal penalty involved if your company is not meeting the PoSH compliances. Second would be awareness, because I feel that if your employees don't know what PoSH Act is, they would never be able to follow the same. So we have to, set these guidelines in their minds. We have to let them know. We have to make them aware. So if you conduct any kind of training on PoSH, what it should be addressing to, it should be addressing to the perceptions of sexual harassment, the impact, as I've been saying again and again, why and how to prevent it, and understand the policy mechanism. The other major benefit, that why you should conduct this training is, of course, to provide safe working environment, to safeguard the company's reputation, and to increase employee retention. Because once any employee, is aware that his or her organization cares for her or him, of course, that boosts the morale of the person. He would like to work for that company, and of course, in turn, it will, help us decreasing the retention. Now, background of PoSH Act. So where does it come from? In 1997, there was this certain benchmark of guidelines which were used to discuss any case which used to come under sexual harassment. But that was superseded in 2013 where by the Supreme Court with this act which came into place, which is known as the PoSH Act, which is, as I've mentioned earlier, it covers prevention, prohibition, and redressing of sexual harassment. Now, what are the statutory compliances that any organization should meet, under this PoSH Act? So any organization, irrespective of its nature, irrespective of its location, if that establishment, the company, the organization has more than 10 employees, 10 or more than 10 employees, it has to, have PoSH policy in place. Be it full-time employees, be it part-time employees, be it interns, be it consultants, it has to be 10 and more. So applicability has to be very clear. PoSH compliances, what you should know. So an idle awareness and sensitization workshop to understand the PoSH Act. You can always go ahead and you can give these trainings, to your employees so that, everybody is on the same page. The definitions are clear. They know the right path, how to deal with it, where and how to stand up, if any incident happens. Law and the sexual harassment policy of the organization. So many a times what happens is, you have the policy in place, but people are not aware of that. So again, as I mentioned, the only thing with which you can enforce any law has to be the training. So you have to create that workshop. You have to implement those training sessions in your organization. Redressal format for sexual harassment policy. People should be aware whom to contact, how to contact, where to contact, how to file a complaint. Members of IC. So IC happens to be an internal committee which needs to be formed. So members of the IC with their contact details needs to be floated among your employees. What are your rights in case you file a complaint? So this basically stands for the employee. If an employee walks up to the IC member to file a complaint, then he or, a woman should know that what are her rights in order to file those complaints, and what all reliefs can she expect? What to expect if a complaint is filed against you? So it's not necessary always that the complaint would be a genuine complaint. We have been hearing cases all this while. So what happens in case there's a malicious complaint if that's filed? So we'll be talking about some definitions now. We'll be defining sexual harassment, offensive behaviors. We'll be identifying, how to identify what's the intent. We'll be recognizing the effects of sexual harassment that can have on people, and what is our role. Our role, when I say our role, we are all collective here. We talk about the employees and the employers together. What steps should we take to prevent the same? Now, sexual harassment, what is it? Any behavior which is unwelcome in nature, with which a person is not comfortable, which is sexual in nature, and it's a very personal experience, it comes under sexual harassment. So if any incident that happens with me, no matter what the intent of the person who's done it is, whether it was good, whether it was bad, but if it has hurted me, if I have felt uncomfortable, it will come under sexual harassment. So impact, what matters, intent doesn't matter. One basic rule to follow how to identify PoSH is the impact. What was the impact of that particular behavior? What was the impact of that particular gesture? So we have to identify by the impact and not the intent. So the intent is not relevant in determining whether or not a behavior is sexual harassment. Impact is what matters. So for example, let me quote an example here. There's a woman who's its first day in the office, and a male employee tries to block her way. Maybe, just to tease her. Maybe that it's the first day, why not to just create a conversation with her? So if that lady finds that very uncomfortable about it, I mean, she's of course upset with it, she can go and file this complaint to the IC member. So the objective of this training or this workshop is not to scare anybody, not to create that fear in your mind, but we should be clear that while we work in our offices, while we work at our workplaces, it becomes our moral duty to not to invade in somebody's private space. Maintain that distance, maintain that professionalism. You have to create those work ethics. You have to show those work ethics while you're working with your colleagues at your workplaces. Okay, so now what constitutes sexual harassment? We have defined it in 4 major categories. Physical contact and advances, of course, very self-explanatory. If any touch, any contact, any advance that has been made with which a person may feel uncomfortable definitely constitutes sexual harassment. Demanding or requesting sexual favors. For example, a manager telling an employee, that you come out on a coffee date with me, I'll give you a promotion. So that's not acceptable. Showing pornography at the workplaces, that is, it may not harm you, but it may, impact your colleagues in such a way that they don't find it comfortable. Or any kind of sexually colored remark. So any remark made on appearance of the body, or maybe the complexion or the religion, so that again comes under the entire sexual harassment policy of the organization. Let's go through some pictures here. So physical contact and advances, just to make clear, in all these pictures, we can definitely see and certainly make it out that the women employee, or maybe the male employee, it's vice versa, can be uncomfortable with such a touch, or maybe with any kind of requesting sexual favors. Showing pornography, in the first picture, of course, the man may be aware, may not be aware that the lady is standing behind. So it's an absolute no. Watching any kind of explicit content while you're in office, it's a big, big no. So you should not do it. If you find anybody doing it, please go ahead and initiate a warning to that person. Making sexually colored remarks. So maybe an individual targeting an individual, maybe a group of individuals targeting a group, maybe a group of individuals targeting one single individual. That comes under hostile work environment, again comes under the sexual harassment. So when we say that, sexual harassment at workplace, so when we talk about workplaces, generally, the term itself says that the physical space that we are sitting in is the workplace. But in PoSH Act, it's not the case. So it's not just your office premises, but it also includes the company guest houses. You may have to travel for official purpose. You may have to go, to site, to the client sites. You may have to go to a different office or a different branch or a different location. So that will also come under the same workplace. Hotel stay during official travel. So let's say two people have to go, maybe a female employee and a male employee, they both have to travel together uh, to some off-site location, and they have to take a hotel there. So if any such incident happens there also, it will come under the PoSH policy of the organization. Client place, etc. So the workplace definition here is not restricted to the physical space where you're sitting, but it also is very, very advanced and stretched up to all, even the transportation that you take while you're coming to the workplace. So even if you take a cab, or even if you take a metro, and two employees of the same organization are traveling, and then something happens, it will come under the PoSH Policy Act. So who's an aggrieved party under the PoSH 2013 Act who can file a complaint? Though this policy is applicable to the men and the women of the organization, but who has the right to file a complaint? There's a certain flaw in the law itself. So it's only the woman. If a man has to, or a male employee has to go ahead and file a complaint, then he has to take a different route of going through the entire sexual harassment policy of the organization, and he can go up to the civil authority or maybe the police station where he can go and file a complaint. But the women, only the female employees of that organization can go ahead and file a complaint under the PoSH Act. So who's an aggrieved party? Now, this aggrieved woman can be employed, can be consultant, can just be visiting the workplace, can be a volunteer, can be a student. So when I say all these, if there's a third party worker who comes to our office daily, who cleans up the office, and any incident happens with her, then is she eligible to go ahead and file a complaint under the PoSH Act? Yes, she is. Why? Because it's not necessary that she needs to be on the payrolls of the company. She can just be visiting the workplace also. So for that matter, if there is a museum, if there's an entertainment zone, if somebody is just walking or a visitor is there, and if any incident happens, then they are liable to go ahead and file a complaint under the PoSH Act. So when I say unwelcome, any behavior which is unwelcome in nature, that constitutes sexual harassment, what do we mean of unwelcome? So even if the victim does not complain, that doesn't mean that the welcome was, that the conduct was welcome. For example, if I touched a person, in a very uncomfortable manner, but that person did not complain about it, so does that mean that it was not unwelcome? No, it was unwelcome, of course, because it made that person upset. Now, some comments and advances are so blatant and crude and are inherently offensive, they will always be deemed as unwelcome. So some examples of unwelcome behavior, here we can look at some pictures. So in all of these pictures, we can clearly see, that whatever is happening, maybe a male employee towards a female employee, or a female employee towards a male employee, whatever act, whatever gestures, whatever hand positions, whatever body positions are there, these are meant to be unwelcome. So you have to maintain, again and again, I'm saying you have to maintain that proper distance while you're working. Yes, if two people are comfortable doing it, there's no problem at all. But if you feel that the person is feeling uncomfortable, please step back, maintain, give that person that privacy, give that person the private space that he or she must need at that point in time. So how do you ascertain unwelcome behavior? Now, when we say that, we as leaders, we as managers, it's our duty, it becomes our, duty and right to go ahead and identify if any such incident is happening at the workplace or not. So how do we ascertain all of this? Either the employee complains, that's a very straightforward method. An employee will just walk in and tell us that, this is something happening. Uh, Verbal responses like no. So when a person is repeatedly saying no, stop right there. Change in expressions, if you as a leader, if you as a manager, if you as a team leader, if you as a supervisor, or in any other managerial role, if you come to know that there's certain change in expressions of my colleague or my team member, please go ahead and ask what's the problem. Body language, you can very well get to know, there's some problem going on. Physical or visible signs of discomfort. Avoidance. So if a person is avoiding you repeatedly, please get to know you have to stop there. Now, what is the behavior impact of all of this? So unwelcome behavior makes a person feel bad, one-sided, powerless, unwanted, illegal, invading, demeaning. It can cause anger, it can cause frustration, it can make an employee to leave that organization. But on the other hand, now what's the positive behavior impact? So, it makes the person feel good, reciprocative, in control, equal, wanted, legal. All of this is legal. It's open, it's appreciative, it's happy, and it creates that positive self-esteem in people. People are motivated to work more, people are motivated to be more productive, people are motivated and dedicated towards the organization. Why? Because they feel that the organization cares for them. So we can clearly see positive work environment leaves a very beautiful smile on employees' faces. However, hostile work environment leaves employees disturbed and unhappy, which none of the employer would want. Now, few signs and hints that which will help us to identify whether it was sexual harassment or not. I am not saying these all acts come under sexual harassment. I'm just saying that these signs can help us to identify. Repeated compliments on an employee's appearance, discussing one's sex life in front of an employee, asking an employee about his or her sex life, making any kind of sexual jokes, sending sexually suggestive text messages or emails. So when I say sending suggestive text messages or emails, this is very common in today's work scenario. Everybody of us use WhatsApp and all the other social media platforms wherein it is very easy to get in touch with our colleagues after office hours. But again, if there is that bonding, if you know that the person is absolutely fine with what you're doing, please go ahead. But if you feel that the person may take it as offensive, don't do it. Leaving unwanted gifts of any sexual or romantic nature in office, giving any kind of gift which the person can be uncomfortable for. Spreading sexual rumors about an employee. So even talking about a person in the work premises, creating rumors about him or her, that girl or that male or that male employee, he's having an affair or she's having an affair. So don't use such words in office. Repeated hugs or other unwanted touching, at times you generally pat on the shoulder or you pat on the back, which is acceptable. But, just try and refrain yourself doing that as well. You should just, respect your physical contact to a handshake, which is always advisable. A sudden change in someone's behavior, we've discussed this earlier also. So if you see that there's a very talkative person has suddenly stopped talking, or maybe he or she is sitting very quiet, they don't want to talk to you about anything, they get irritated, or maybe there's some kind of negativity that you can see in that person, please go and talk to them. Now, examples of sexual harassment, as I just mentioned earlier as well, it is not necessary that it has to be physical in nature. It is verbal, it is visual. So we'll be discussing all these examples in detail. Now, what is verbal harassment? Anything that comes out of your mouth has to be a verbal harassment. For example, making inappropriate jokes, remarks, teasing, asking someone to go out with you, unwelcome sexual advances and sexual favors, inquiring about somebody's sexual preference, inquiring about the history of that colleague in a sexual manner, gossiping about somebody and spreading sexual rumors or sexual lies about them, using abusive language and offensive name calling, commenting negatively about a person's clothing, body, or personal behavior. So that is sexually colored remark. Any comment on the appearance of the person or the complexion or the religion or body shaming, as we say, can make the person feel upset about it. Making inappropriate sounds such as kissing sounds, whistling, smackling lips, sending someone sexual emails, notes, or letters. Verbal attacks, for instance, arguing with someone using threatening, discriminatory, or demeaning words. Physical harassment, the word says it itself, a touch in advance, intimidating gestures, deliberately brushing or rubbing your body against someone, you're deliberately trying to rub your shoulder, or you're deliberately trying to touch somebody's hand, that can make the person feel uncomfortable. Blocking another employee movements, as I quoted that example at the starting of the session. You're trying to block somebody's way. Your intent was very clear, you were just teasing the person, but the impact is what matters. Kissing or hugging someone inappropriately, and unwelcome touching of another person's hair, clothes, or body. Non-verbal, which we often call as visual harassment also. So sending sexual images, for instance, sending pornographic videos to another person through a social website without informing the person. Unwelcome gestures to another person, staring at someone's body. So when we say staring, we can easily make out that the person is, giving you those uncomfortable looks from top to toe. So again, that comes in visual harassment. Making the person feel uncomfortable, placing a poster with information related to sexual behaviors. This often happens, in terms of teasing a person, or maybe what we say is character assassination, exposing someone else offensive pictures or images without their consent. So this all will come under visual harassment. Now, who can be a sexual harasser? We just talked about who can be an aggrieved woman. So it is not necessary that an aggrieved woman has to be the employee of the organization. She can be a consultant. She can be just visiting the workplace. She can be a student. She can be a third party worker. So similarly, a sexual harasser, according to the law, can be anyone. So, regardless of his sex, sexual preference, age, or professional position, anybody can sexually harass a person. Owners, supervisors, co-workers, third-party workers, a visitor, so anybody. So the definition remains the same for the aggrieved woman and for the sexual harasser. So sexual harassment, in the workplace has been categorized into two groups under the Act. One is quid pro quo. That's a Latin phrase, which means this for that in English. You give me this, I'll give you this. You give me this, I'll give you that. Making fake promises, making sexual promises, making, like I've just quoted, and a supervisor promising an employee a raise in the salary if she go out on a date with him. And the other category happens to be the hostile work environment, wherein a female employee or a male employee is targeted by a group of people, subjected to rumors, gossip, character assassination, unwelcome sexual advances by other people also. So that is a hostile work environment. Quid pro quo, we have just discussed this, sexual favors which are asked in exchange of any kind of special treatment on the job. Or maybe an employee threatens an associate that if he or she does not consent to such sexual advances or favors, then maybe she's fired from the job. So I'll fire you, if you don't go out with me. So that's a quid pro quo. Or maybe I'll give you a beautiful cabin, to work in this office. I'll construct it for you if you start a relationship with me. So this is all quid pro quo. Hostile environment. This occurs when speech or conduct of a sexual nature takes place and is seen as offensive, which affects the performance of the recipient or associates, or intimidating, harassing conduct that is directed at an individual or a group of individuals, which takes place. Now, All this while we've been discussing what all is sexual harassment, but what is not sexual harassment? So if you're asking an employee to raise up to the standards, if he or she is not working up to the mark, if you're telling that person to please buck up, that is not sexual harassment. If you're touching a person not with a sexual connotation, that is not sexual harassment. Any work related stress, for example deadlines ka target ho ya quality standards meet karne ka target ho, that will not come under sexual harassment. If it is a reprimandation in relation to work meeting targets or deadlines, no. Following up on work absences, so for example I am on a leave and my manager calls me to ask, that today was the you had to submit the report, so where is it? I cannot go ahead and file a complaint that he was harassing me while I was on leave. So that will not come under sexual harassment. Why? Because it doesn't have any sexual connotation attached to it. Now, what is the impact of sexual harassment? Of course, it has a legal impact. It impacts the employee's mental health. It impacts the employee's physical health. It impacts the hiring and retention. Now, why hiring and retention? If a person has to be replaced or transferred, we'll be talking about the consequences in the last few slides. But if a person needs to be transferred to another location, then we need to hire another person as a replacement. And if an employee leaves, that this organization doesn't have a policy in place, so we have to again cover that retention by hiring another person. It impacts it impacts the employee productivity, and it impacts the brand. So the most important and the most thing that we need to focus on is that if any incident happens and we don't have a policy in place, it can go ahead and it can impact the brand in a very, very adverse manner. So we all have to take those steps. We all have been listening to the statement, prevention is better than cure. So why not to prevent it? Why to wait for the cure? Think like a leader. So what are the do's and what are the don'ts? Now, the do's are, we have to provide guidance. When we say we, again, we're talking about both employees and the employer. We have to create a culture of feedback. We have to create a friendly environment around us wherein people can come up and approach, in case if any incident has happened. We have to develop values, deal with any allegations and concerns immediately. Please do not linger on to it. If you've heard a complaint, deal it immediately. That's always better. The sooner, the better. Setting the right tone with a clear zero tolerance message is an important first step. So, for example, again, let's say a male employee has been harassed by a female employee. So the male employee was all good for 10 incidents, and 11th incident, he went up and filed a complaint. So, of course, people will ask, why didn't you give that indication in the first instance itself that this is something I will not tolerate, this is something that I'll stand up for, I'll not be silent, and it's a clear zero tolerant thing to be done. So we have to, we all of us have to create that culture in our workplaces wherein we have to tell people, please maintain distance. Never consider the option of silence. That will never be helpful. What are some don'ts? So what generally happens at workplaces is that a person walking up to a person saying that मेरे साथ ये हो गया. So generally हम सबका mindset ऐसा होता है that the other person will say अरे तूने ही कुछ करा होगा, या तूने कोई hints तो नहीं दिए थे, या maybe you would have given some indications. So please don't downplay the issue. That will create more damage. That will create more harm. Avoid prejudging complaints. No assumptions, no pre-assumptions, just stick to the facts. Now, what are some steps to prevent sexual harassment at the workplaces? What are the employee duties? Do not ignore it. Report the incident. Do not accept the behavior. Be supportive with your colleagues if they are facing through it, and you have to be strong and supportive in that particular scenario, because many of us would consider the option of silence. We will not be speaking about it due to many factors, but what is advisable, that please don't be silent. Raise awareness. So it's only and only awareness, trainings, workshops, which can help people to understand what is right and what is wrong. Examine your behavior, examine your colleagues' behavior. If you do both of the last two steps, that you examine your behavior, you are examining your colleagues' behavior, trust me, 90% of the prevention would happen at that stage. What are the duties of the employer? Provide a safe working environment at the workplace, organizing workshops and awareness programs at regular intervals. So not just once, you have to create those posters, you have to create those banners, put it on the workstations, put it in the bays, put it at the cafeterias, put it at the pantries, where people are standing in groups, they can have a look at it so that it gets into their mind. Treat sexual harassment as a misconduct under the service rules and initiate action for such misconduct. And employer under the act is liable to display at an appropriate location the penal consequences of sexual harassment at workplace. So when I say that the policy needs to be drafted, that policy should also be floated amongst your employees so that they know what exactly needs to be done. Now, this, when I say that the penal consequences should be, at such a place where everybody can have a look at it, it's very important because it has to be at a common place in somewhere in the office. Maybe at the reception, nobody would like to put it at the reception. Maybe at the cafeteria, maybe, on that notice board, maybe on the wall of fame, somewhere. So, it's common to all. Now, how to eliminate sexual harassment from your workplaces? Show leadership through zero tolerance. Zero tolerance is the major step. In the first instance, do not stay silent and show that it is something that you will never ever accept. Establish equality as a core principle. This is for the employers. Please don't treat your male employees and female employees with different perspectives. Treat them equal. They all are equal. Modernize your workplace standards. Again, when I say modernize, make people aware of what their rights are, make people aware, boost their morale, create that culture of feedback. Vigorously enforce the law at all levels. At all the levels means that it is not just for the associates, not just for the managers, it's for everybody. And we have to collectively, we have to work collectively, we have to come together collectively in order to combat this bias and stereotypes, which has been happening for years now. So it's all of us who have to do it. Now, 3 magic tips on how to prevent sexual harassment at the workplace. This is for all of us. Harassment is in the eyes of the beholder. So we have got, we have that special power, or whatever you want to say, a gift by God. We get to know it, all of us. So, please maintain an eye contact only when you're talking to a person. Do not roll your eyes from top to toe. That is when you can make a person feel uncomfortable. Limit your physical contact to handshakes. It's always advisable, but yes, in today's modern work scenario, we've seen that side hugs are very common. That's fine. If the person is fine with it, it should be absolutely fine. Patting on the shoulder, patting at the back, or maybe a genuine, a decent hug is also acceptable at times. But again, it has to be with the consent of both the people. It cannot be forced on a person. Be careful to what you email or display on your computer. So again, I'm talking about any such explicit content that can be visible on your computer, which can make the other person feel uncomfortable. Maybe an email, maybe some picture, or maybe a video that you're watching in office, and the other person is just walking by in the background, and he or she gets to see that picture. It can make them upset or uncomfortable. How to file a complaint. Now, what is the complaint mechanism? We'll be talking about it. The aggrieved woman, of course, can file a complaint. I'm sorry, but there's no other right for a male employee to go ahead and file a complaint under this PoSH Act. But yes, he can go and file a complaint under the entire sexual harassment policy of the organization. Now, in case the aggrieved woman cannot file it herself, her friend, her family member, her legal hire can go ahead and file a complaint on her behalf. How? The complaint has to be in writing. No verbal complaints will be taken care of. when it has to be filed within 3 months from the incident. Now, if there are series of incident, then it has to be 3 months from the last incident which has taken place, and where it has to be filed within with the internal committee. Now, we'll be talking about what is IC. So all workplaces that have 10 or more employees need to have this policy in place, PoSH policy, but also they need to form an IC, internal committee. Now, internal committee, as per the act, it has to be filed at all the offices or all the administrative units of the workplace, at different locations. So for example, if my office is in Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore, then IC needs to be formed for Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore. Now, if the workplace has less than 10 employees, then it should not be forming an IC. All complaints in this case will go to the local complaints committee, which is set up as per the act by district officers of each district. The structure of IC. Now, how IC should be formed? There could be 4 to 5 members in that committee. The first member has to be a senior level employee of the organization, but she has to be a female. She would be the presiding officer. Then there are 2 employee members committed to the cause of women's safety, and the 4th member has to be from an external, he has to be an external member from a NGO or a private organization with 5 years of work experience in women empowerment. So we have to make sure that whenever an IC is formed, 50% of the total strength needs to be the women. So 50% or more. So if there are 5 members, we have to make sure 3 are females and 2 are males. Now, what to expect after filing the complaint? Now, whenever a complaint goes to an IC member or the committee, there are 2 types of solutions. One is conciliation and one is inquiry. Conciliation, as we all understand, 2 people are made to sit together. They are asked about what happened, and then maybe a warning, a verbal warning, or whatever action the IC member has to take, they can take. Inquiry is when, a person says that I've not done it. So you have to go through that investigation route. So there's a different training for IC members. There's a different training for employees. And we can help both getting done from, NBC advisors. So inquiry is when a proper investigation route is followed. There are so many terms and guidelines, which needs to be followed by the IC members when they do, an investigation. So these are the 2 types of solutions basically. What reliefs can an employee expect if my harasser is found guilty? Now, there are 2 types of reliefs. One is disciplinary action against the harasser, which comes in the form of a warning, withholding the promotion, prohibiting the harasser from going near the complainant, firing the harasser from the service, and the monetary compensation can be decided by IC if there's a mental trauma, pain, suffering that the IC members feel that the victim has gone through, emotional distress caused to the victim, loss in career opportunity, for example, that person would have to leave the job, medical expenses incurred by the victim for any kind of treatment, income and financial status of the victim. This all has to be decided by IC looking at all these factors, and whatever the amount is decided, the person has this feasibility of making that payment. I mean, the harasser has that feasibility of making that payment in lump sum or in installments. So this everything, all these powers are vested with the IC members. Now, what is a false or a malicious complaint? So as I just mentioned, it's not always necessary all complaints are genuine. There are, cases wherein we hear that the complaint was maliciously filed, because even women have that habit of taking that advantage. So if any complaint under the PoSH Act is made dishonestly, or if the complainant submits any forged documents, it is considered as a false complaint. And in such case, IC will recommend to the employer to take necessary disciplinary action against the complainant. So whatever actions can be taken for the harasser, the same actions can be taken for the complainant also, if we find that the complaint was filed with a wrong intention. Now, what are some reasons that people can go ahead and file malicious complaints? The reasons are many. but just to highlight few of them: to exact revenge against a fellow employee, maybe to bring down the name of the company, maybe to have some immediate monetary benefits, maybe to gain publicity that may help, them in gaining sympathy. Maybe a workplace relationship has gone wrong, or maybe just to blackmail a senior executive or a manager or a team leader for getting promotions. So as I mentioned, as I talked about it earlier, that if a manager is telling an associate that you come on a date with me and I'll give you a promotion, it can be vice versa also. It can be the other way around also, that a associate is going ahead and blackmailing the manager that you better give me a promotion or I'll go and file a complaint. So both the scenarios are valid. Now, protection against retaliation. This is a very, very major aspect which needs to be met by the organization, because whenever a complaint is filed, retaliation has to happen. It always happens. So it is the employer's duty to give that protection to the victim against any kind of retaliation. Now, retaliation is a very serious violation of the PoSH policy. Any form of retaliation against a victim or their supporters is forbidden. Now, people who retaliate in the form of intimidation, they can do it in the form of intimidation. They can pressurize the victim to withdraw the case, or maybe they can just put that threat that you have to take this complaint back, or I'll do this to your family or that to your family, or I'll not leave your job safe, and I'll go ahead and start talking about it, or maybe rumors or anything. So that will all come under this retaliation. It will be treated as a major, major misconduct, and the committee needs to take the action in order to rectify it. And any person who's retaliated against an individual for reporting harassment will be subjected to disciplinary procedures. Now, legal and cost implications. So legal implication is that if an organization is found out that they don't have a policy in place, or they are not maintaining, so this act, there are four major compliances which need to be followed. One is drafting of PoSH policy. A PoSH policy needs to be in place. Second, formation of IC. Third is that annual report has to be filed every calendar year, with the number of cases they've heard, with the number of cases they've disposed of, what was the matter all about, and the detailed analysis of if any investigation has taken place or not. Now, if you don't do these compliances, then 50,000 is the penalty which can be filed for the organization. Apart from that, there is an individual productivity and team performance cost which will get added to it. There will be litigation cost if there's a complaint filed in the court. There could be recruitment cost which can add up to the cost again, because if the person leaves or decides to leave the organization, again you have to hire a replacement. Turnover and transfer cost. So when we were talking about reliefs, when the harasser is found guilty, so the action can be in the form of giving him a transfer or terminating him from the service. So again, you have to find a replacement, which will again add up to the cost. Brand perception and reputation costs, of course. So in total, it's a huge, huge cost to a company, not just 50,000. All right, so I'll be glad to answer any of the questions if you have. Disha, if you can please go ahead and read out questions, and I'll be able to answer them.
Sure. So first question we have from Priyanka. She is saying, under definition of applicability for counting no number of people, that is 10, do we need to consider men as well as women?
Yes. So 10 employees, no matter what's the strength of women and male. If the total number of people in your organization is 10 or more, you have to meet all of these compliances. It's a mandate now by the law.
Okay, so next question is from Neha Gupta. Could the tenure of ICC members more than 3 years?
Yes, that is right. The tenure of the IC members is 3 years.
Okay. And another question, she's saying, just an observation, infographic of a leader representing male person.
Yeah.
Just an she's just written that it was just an observation that infographic of a leader representing male person.
Infographic of a leader representing a male person. So I'm not able to get the question
Yes,
clear.
even I didn't get it. Neha, if you have any other thing on your mind, you can just let us know again. We'll get back to you on this. Now, another question is from Seema Sunil. It is external member of the committee. Experience in women empowerment means if he or she has been working on PoSH, is it sufficient?
No, basically, that person needs to be from the NGO, and it has to be a female for sure, because then only we'll be considering it as an external member from an NGO who has worked for at least 5 years, not only on POSH, but other aspects of women empowerment also.
Okay, so now another one is from Mr. Anil Mahajan. He is asking that is PoSH who is PoSH also applicable on my overseas subsidiaries and branches?
So there are different laws. This POSH Act that we have talked about is only for India, but yes, this POSH Act is available. I mean, it's a mandate for all the countries in the world. There are certain changes in the law, so we can get in touch with them basis, what location are we talking about.
Okay. Irina Stanley, she's asking, should the written complaint be legally sound or it can be in simple language?
No, it can be in simple language, because if the female employee is not filing the complaint herself, as I mentioned, her family member, her legal hire, or a friend or a relative can also give that complaint in writing. So it can be as per the layman's language.
Okay. Another one is from Shreya Sharma. In case of no case raised under POSH,
Mhm.
should one still create a report mentioning no case raised? What should be the flow if yes?
Yes, so the annual report has to be filed irrespective of the number of cases. Even if it is zero, it has to be submitted with the annual report that you file with the MCA every year. So this POSH report has to be attached with the other reports that you file annually. No matter you just mentioned, that there was no case in the entire year, and that is all.
Okay, so Shreya has another question. What is the ratio of ICC members?
So the ratio of ICC members, the female employees needs to be 50% or more of the total number of members. So for example, if there are 4 members, 2 can be female employees. If there are 5 members, 3 has to be the female employees.
Okay, so now another one is from Rajan. You mentioned touching, brushing against, etc., without sexual connotation.
Mhm,
Isn't sexual harassment.
mhm.
However, how you also said impact matters and not intent.
Very
Can
true.
you
Yeah.
just clarify since it's bit contradicting?
Okay. So I'll give you an example. When two people are talking, let's say that we are, cracking a joke. So, a person like maybe just does like this, you know, brushing or pushing the shoulder against that person's shoulder, but it was nothing related to sexual connotation. So the other person would have felt absolutely normal, because they have that bonding between them. The two people involved here did not have any complaints about it, and the situation was just vanished. There was no talking about it, nothing doing. But now, if a male employee or a female employee is trying to deliberately get into that space and deliberately touch that shoulder or rub that shoulder or brush your body against the will of that particular person, the person has to feel uncomfortable. The impact matters there. So your intention does not matter, the impact matters, on which that act has been performed, or to which that behavior has been done. So I hope I'm clear on that. If there's anything more detail that you require to it, I would be glad to draft a proper email with all the guidelines and share it across.
Okay, so now Neha has another question that is for tenure of ICC members. I'm asking that can it be extended more than 3 years?
Yes, so that is, again, the different. I mean, if all the members agree that the tenure should be extended, it can be. Otherwise, the tenure has to be 3 years.
Okay, so now Ruby Verma has a question. Does India have a special law against sexual harassment at the workplace?
Yes, so that's what I was all talking about it. It's a mandate by the law now. PoSH Act 2013 makes it very clear for all organizations who have more than 10 employees to get the policy in place, to form the IC, to share the contact details of the IC with the employees, and to file that PoSH annual report every calendar year. So all of these that I'm saying are the mandate compliances which need to be met by the organization. So if you're not doing that, and if there's a sudden case that comes up and the court finds out that there was no policy in place and you have more than 10 employees, then you're again liable to pay 50,000 as a penalty.
Okay, so Seema has a question. How often should we conduct POSH awareness session in office in a year compulsorily?
So I would suggest that first if you have a PoSH policy in place, the training can be, just about the policy, what it talks about, the definitions that I've talked about. But yes, if there's no policy at all, first make the policy and then roll out a training, because then people will have a better understanding that what it relates to, so that they're clear of all the definitions. Because as I just said, for us, the workplace is only the physical presence, but under the act, the workplace has a larger definition. So it's always better to first draft the policy. If you have the policy in place, we'll be happy to review that for you if there's any change that's required. And then maybe a single workshop can also do, or if you feel that, a refresher or there are some new joinees or new hire in the company and you need to conduct that training maybe after 3 months for those new people, we can also do that.
Okay, so Bushra has a question. Can IC members be re-elected?
Yes, they can be. So if there's any complaint found against the IC member itself, of course they have to be re-elected.
Okay. Moksha is saying, can we get detailed document on PoSH Act policy?
Definitely. I'll be sharing the handouts with all the members who've been attending the webinar. I'll be glad to share it with you.
Okay, Shreya has a question. Is there any specific background to have an employee and employer representative within a committee?
No. So two employee members, when I said they should be, working for women's safety for like 2-3 years. And the presiding officer, which I said has to be a female employee, she needs to be at a very senior level position, because only then she'll be able to be elected as a presiding officer.
Okay, so Priya is asking, can you show one sample of report which IC needs to submit at the end of the year?
Yes, so I'll be sharing the draft of the annual report of the PoSH Act that needs to be filed with the, MCA.
Okay, another question is from Irina. Is it okay to have a male as presiding officer and HR as one of the member in the IC?
No, the presiding officer has to be a female.
Okay. And Neeta is saying wonderful and very informative presentation. Thank you so much, Neeta. Another Bushra has a question. If regional office has only one or two female employees, how IC can be formulated with a given ratio?
So when the organization only has one or two employees, then the presiding officer has to be the senior most of those two. And then the employee members, when I talk about two of them, so one can be a male and one can be a female.
Okay, Hina has a question. When the annual report need to be filed, is it mentioned in Act anywhere?
Yes, that is.
Okay.
It is clearly mentioned under the PoSH Act.
Okay. So Girija has a question. Employer need to file yearly returns. If there is no case, then also?
Yes. As I mentioned, even if there is no complaint throughout the year, a report will still be filed stating that there was no case throughout the year and there was no hearing or no investigation done.
Okay, Ranjana has a question that we have a retail stores across country where average manpower in one store is 30 to 40. Do we need to have an IC at stores as well?
Yes, IC needs to be formed for all the stores across the country. How many, irrespective of the number, how many they are.
Hina has a question, whether PoSH applicable on embassies in India?
Yes, so even embassies, all organizations, irrespective of the nature, irrespective of the industry, irrespective of the number, the location, if the number of employees is 10 or more, it is applicable to all.
Okay, Tanu has a question. If the head of the organization is a male and
Mhm.
the senior most female employee has less than 3 years of experience,
That's
can
fine.
they
That's
still
fine.
get the IC?
Yeah. So the presiding officer has to be a senior most employee, irrespective of the numbers or number of experience that she holds in the company.
Okay. Now another question is what is the last date for filing yearly returns?
So it has to be filed every calendar year along with all the other reports, which is at the end of the financial year.
All right. And Manpreet has a question. For the return to be filed, what is the deadline? If it is a calendar year or for the year that we consider?
So the complaints would be considered for the calendar year. However, the report can be filed before 31st of March.
Tanu has a question. Playing songs of sexual nature will be the part of sexual harassment.
Yes, because if the people sitting and listening to those songs are uncomfortable, yes, it can constitute to sexual harassment. So it's always better to maintain those workplace ethics.
Ashu has a question. Also, can same IC members continue after tenure of 3 years?
Yes, but all of them should have a consent. All the existing members should have a consent to that.
Priyanka is asking how to ensure training program in compliance of law. And is there any qualification for an IC member?
Yes, so IC members do have they have a certain qualification which needs to be followed. So I'll be sharing the draft with them, all the guidelines that is required, how to file a report. So if anybody of you need that information from us, I'll be happy to share that with you.
All right. And Dhanshri has a question. If there is a newbie who is not aware about PoSH policy and if involved in any circumstances, will he be punished?
Yes, because it's the employer's, duty to inform all the newbies, new hires of the organization to be well aware of the policy and the act. If the training was missing from the employer's end, but the incident has happened, of course, if he's found guilty, he has to be punished.
Okay. So I hope I have asked all the questions. Okay, Rakesh Chaudhary has a question. Can we consider advocate for an external committee member?
No, he has to be from an NGO.
Okay. So if any questions which is I have missed it or something, I would like anyone can raise a hand and I'll unmute them and they can ask the question directly. If anybody is there, we have another 5 minutes to go ahead with it.
Apart from that, Disha, you can also run that poll. So, it'll be easy for us to get to know if they want any kind of help or assistance from us. We'll be glad to take a review on your PoSH policy if you have an existing one. If no, we can draft the policy for you. We can form the IC for you. We can provide the external member for you. And we can also share the draft of the annual report for you to file it yourself. Or if you want us to file it on your behalf, we'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay, so Shreya, we'll just get back to you. Give us a second. I'm starting a poll, guys. This is about would you like us to get in touch with you to discuss PoSH compliance in details? Maybe a review of your PoSH policy to start with. I'm starting a poll for another 10 seconds. I will like you all to please poll on it. We are starting with it.
So Disha, you can keep it on for like 15 seconds. So, people can just read it out and they can pull it. So please, guys, you can click yes, no, maybe later. We'll be responding it as per your preference. We'll be responding to it as per your preference, and we'll be glad to discuss it also in detail if you want us to give you a phone call or an email, to discuss about the compliances in detail.
So Shreya, in the meantime, I'm just allowing you to talk. You can ask your correct question directly to Richa. So we have Shreya with us.
Hi, Richa. It was lovely to attend this session. First of all, congratulations for that. It
Thank you so
was very interesting, And every word was very important, of course. Impact and intent, yes, definitely. So I just have one question, Richa. For an instance, we have different organizations on a single floor.
Uh-huh.
And if we see two employees from a different organization in a compromising situation, maybe at the staircase or parking, what should we as an IC member do?
So if you are an IC member, you can only get into the investigation or maybe a conciliation if the female employee is of your organization. So if the female employee happens to be from some other organization, then any which ways you don't have a role to play, because only an aggrieved woman under the act can come to you and file a complaint. But yes,
Sure.
you have to take that ahead. If the female employee is from your organization, you will definitely have to get into that investigation.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we have stopped the poll as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for it. And I think, Richa, you can end the session. We are done with questions as well.
All right, it was lovely to see you all, attending this, and I would be glad to assist you anytime that you need me. Maybe a conversation would be a great initiative to start with. I would be, making these sessions more available for you guys to attend. So I hope that you attend it next time as well. Thank you so much, guys.